The Tesla Model 3 has for a long time been the benchmark for fully electric vehicles, but now we have its updated model. It's also codenamed the Highland. Now, at the time of filming and in the UK, it's only available in two configurations. A rear-wheel drive model that costs £40,000 and an all-wheel drive long-range model that costs £50,000. Indeed, Tesla has omitted the performance model, at least at launch. Now, there is a lot of competition in this space right now. You've got the likes of the Polestar 2, the BMW i4, the Hyundai Ioniq 6, and even the BYD Seal. So in this review, you can see if it's actually worth the price tag and how it compares to its modern rivals. Now, before proceeding with this video, I would just like to thank AntCharge for actually sponsoring it. More on them a little bit later. So to kick things off, let's talk about what really defines a Tesla. And by that I mean range and efficiency. Now, unfortunately, the manufacturer does not provide any sort of data on its battery pack. However, if you look around on the internet, and of course take it with a pinch of salt, you've got a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack on the rear-wheel drive model and 78 to 82 kilowatt hour on the all-wheel drive long-range model. Now, the manufacturer does provide official WLTP claims, as it should, and as a result means that the rear-wheel drive model gets 318 miles, however, the all-wheel drive long range sits at 390 miles. Now, from my own mixed driving test, because I never like to take WLTP test cycle figures with any sort of sincerity, I actually netted 270 to 290 miles in the all-wheel drive long range, which is actually very impressive, but also a little bit disappointing, because I was actually expecting the range to improve over its predecessor, which netted roughly 300 to 310 miles. I'm not really sure if it was in terms of a different climate, or potentially I was driving a little bit more fruitfully or on longer drives, but nonetheless over here I can only go based on my own test data and also what is provided via the infotainment system in order for me to get a range figure. Now, if you do look elsewhere, you will actually be able to see that the Model 3 has finally been dethroned by the likes of the BYD Seal rear-wheel drive. And indeed, in this respect, this vehicle does actually do a tremendous job when it comes to the overall efficiency. Similarly, you've got some other vehicles out there from the BYD Seal all-wheel drive or the single-motor Polestar 2 or BMW, and let alone the VW ID3 with its 77 kilowatt hour battery pack. These are all fantastic alternatives to the likes of the Tesla Model 3 Highland, and therefore are considerations when you're looking at a longer range electric vehicle. Now, another thing that took me by surprise is the lack of customization when it comes to regenerative braking. Right now I'm approaching a traffic light, I'm driving at 35 miles an hour, and I'm going to lift off the accelerator pedal and the vehicle will start decelerating pretty harshly, and it will indeed come to a complete standstill. I'm a little bit off the van, so I'm actually going to approach it a little bit further. But what I'm trying to say over here is that it does have a one pedal drive, which is fantastic, and I really do love it. I in fact drive with one pedal mode wherever I can in any sort of electric vehicle, but it's a shame that there is no means of customizing it like you used to have on the older Tesla Model 3. I appreciate a firmware update came around and actually took away the option for current Model 3 owners, but I don't really understand why. See, here you have to constantly apply some pressure on the accelerator pedal, and that can be a little bit annoying when you're on the motorway. Of course, you can initiate autopilot and auto steer and let the car do it for itself, but let's say if you want to have more control and you don't want to use said functions, then unfortunately here you're going to have to constantly apply pressure on the accelerator pedal, so you can't really coast. And if you are going to be comparing it with some of the alternatives out there, for example the Hyundai Ioniq 6, which in my opinion is absolutely class leading in this department because it provides you such a degree of customization and gives you that one pedal drive, it would have been great to see Tesla actually try and up the game, but unfortunately that's not the case. Now, where the Tesla really does shine is in terms of charging, and I'm not just talking about the current that it can take, but also in terms of the charging infrastructure, which is absolutely phenomenal. You can rock up to a Tesla supercharger, plug and play, and it's just going to work. You know it's going to work because Tesla really have nailed it down, and it's something that all the manufacturers are really trying to catch up with and partner with a variety of different providers, but they really can't match Tesla in this department. Now, furthermore, the vehicle can take a ridiculous 250 kilowatts of input on the all-wheel drive model and 170 kilowatts on the rear-wheel drive model, and therefore means that you can go from 10 to 80% with an appropriate supercharger in roughly 25 to 30 minutes, which is really fast. Now, if you're going to be plugging in at home, you will be pleased to know that the new Tesla Model 3, very much like the old model, has got an 11 kilowatt onboard charger. And therefore, you can go from roughly 0 to 100% in 6 hours in the rear-wheel drive model and 0 to 100% in roughly 8 hours in the all-wheel drive model. Now, I would like to point out that there is a feature that is missing in comparison to some of its competitors, and that is vehicle-to-load charging. Now, it's not exactly something that I actually use on a day-to-day basis, but might be something that you might want to consider, specifically if you go camping. This effectively allows you to discharge the battery pack to another electric vehicle or power a household appliance, such as, let's say, pop on the kettle. And therefore, some of its competitors do offer said functionality via an adapter, but unfortunately that is not present even in the new Tesla Model 3. Speaking about replenishing the vehicle's battery pack, it perfectly brings me onto today's sponsor, AntCharge, a free app that enables you to share your charging experience and even regularly rewards you. AntCharge is the most trusted platform for rating public chargers. By contributing to the app, you'll be helping others find the best charge points and also actively improving the charging infrastructure by providing key information to operators such as BP Pulse and Source London, among many others. Better still, the app is fun to use, as you can compete with others by earning points. All that's required to sign up is an email, so all your data remains anonymous. If you download the AntCharge app using the link below, you'll even get some starting credit. Now, aside from efficiency, what about when it comes to performance? Well, here there are no official power or torque figures that have been shared by the manufacturer. However, there is a 0 to 60 miles an hour claim of 5.8 seconds with a rear-wheel drive model and 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds on the all-wheel drive model. Both vehicles have got a top speed of 125 miles an hour. Now, using RaceLogic's Performance Box Touch, I had the all-wheel drive model tested from 0 to 20 miles an hour in 1.32 seconds, 0 to 30 miles an hour in 2 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour in 4.29 seconds, so indeed very close to the manufacturer's claim, and then 50 to 70 miles an hour in 1.87 seconds, and a peak acceleration of 0.69 Gs. So aside from its raw performance, what about when it comes to its handling characteristics? Well, here it's pretty good. You've got a decent sense of connection with the front axle, and the steering wheel, very much like its predecessor, feels a little bit twitchy. However, I don't feel it competes with some of the alternatives out there, namely, for example, the Polestar 2, or more specifically, the BMW i4, which really does reign supreme in this department. Nonetheless, via the new Tesla Model 3, you have got 3 steering modes to select from via the infotainment system: Comfort, Standard and Sport, where the latter will actually stiffen up the steering response. Now, where I really do feel it is let down is when it comes to its braking system. It really cannot compete with some of the alternatives out there and just feels a little bit inadequate. Here at the front, you have got 4-piston fixed brakes with 320mm discs, and at the rear it sits at 335mm. Putting my foot down on the brake pedal in a safe environment in the country roads, I just felt that the vehicle just didn't stop fast enough. But of course, here I don't suspect most people will be doing that, and in the later dates, hopefully you will see a Model 3 performance which will really up the ante in this department. But just worth considering if you're comparing and contrasting. Now, elsewhere, the vehicle does feel really well planted, and that's because the all-wheel drive vehicle that is on review has got excellent traction. I had no issues whatsoever when it came to exiting a corner, and I had fantastic level of confidence. The same couldn't be said about some of its competitors, so say, for example, the MG4 EV X-Power, and in this respect, the Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive does a phenomenal job. Now, aside from this, the manufacturer has actually tried to work on the suspension system by providing you independent double wishbone coil spring telescopic dampers at the front and independent multi-link coil spring telescopic dampers at the rear. Now, the combination of all of this means that in comparison to its predecessor, it just feels a little bit more softer to drive and therefore a little bit more comfortable, specifically when you're pottering around town at lower speeds. However, I did notice a few times that there was a bit of a harsh rebound, and this was specifically when I was going on a little bit more uneven terrain or challenging terrain. And in this respect, I don't think it can quite compete with the all-wheel drive BYD Seal, nor the BMW i4 with its adaptive suspension system, which in my opinion is an absolute work of art. So over here, Tesla has tried to improve the overall driving comfort, but it still can't quite compete with some of its key competitors. Now, elsewhere, the overall cabin noise has been kept down to a minimum. In fact, the manufacturer claims that there has been a 30% wind noise reduction, 20% road noise reduction, 30% ambient noise insulation, and 25% impact noise in comparison to its predecessor. Frankly, the older model did a phenomenal job in this department, and yes indeed the new Tesla Model 3 does a slight bit better job, but it's not exactly a night and day difference. Rather that you're still getting a serene in-cabin experience, and one that will be very much appreciated for a lot of consumers. This all brings me onto its interior design, which has been updated from the previous generation model. Here you have got updated materials towards the dashboard, the upholstery and the headliner, and even have got ambient lighting that stretches around the cabin, all of which are certainly appreciated. However, in my opinion, it still doesn't compete with its key rivals, such as the BMW i4, the Polestar 2, the Hyundai Ioniq 6 or the BYD Seal, all of which are far more superior in terms of the look and feel. But I'll be curious to know what you make of the comparison down the comment section below. Now, aside from this, I would like to point out that there's a black interior that comes fitted as standard, at least at the time of filming and in the UK, while if you want the black and white interior that is pictured, you'll have to splash out an additional £1,100. Now, being a Tesla, it's no surprise that you've got that minimalist design, and here you've got a 15.4-inch display that dominates the center of the dashboard. This actually is a shame that it cannot be swiveled towards the driver or the passenger, like you'd find on the Model S Plaid. It would have been a nice touch at this price point. Nonetheless, the display itself is very vivid and super responsive, but it actually has to be. Not only for you to access the fantastic route planning, which is done via Google Maps, or the fantastic suite of apps which are done for your entertainment, or the climate controls or even your media controls, but also in order for you to initiate drive or reverse. Indeed, over here, the drive selector is done directly via the display. You swipe up to go into drive, swipe down to go into reverse, tap to park or go into neutral. Now, this can actually be done automatically via the auto shift out of park feature, which can be toggled on or off via the infotainment system, and this effectively incorporates the camera systems that are found outside of the vehicle to determine if you're in front of a wall or indeed in front of a car, and therefore makes it quite intuitive to just sit in and go. Still, it's something worth considering that it's still in beta, so I wouldn't fully rely on it. Now, yes indeed, all your controls are done directly via the infotainment system, but you've also got the speedometer which is displayed on it, and that's because you've got no instrument cluster nor a head-up display, which in my opinion is quite baffling, because it would be great to see the American automaker actually incorporate it as an option for certain people who want to keep their eyes planted on the road, rather than having them glance towards the center of the display in order to check their traversing speed, to make sure they're not, for example, breaking the law. Now, on that note as well, you have also got no indicator stalks. Yes, indeed, the manufacturer has gone for an even more minimalist design and eradicated the stalks altogether. Now, I'm all for it when it comes to the drive mode selector, but when it comes to indicating, it is actually a safety hazard, at least in my opinion, for someone who lives in the UK. I regularly use my indicators when I'm indicating in and out of a roundabout, and unfortunately over here, when it comes to using the new Model S Plaid or indeed the Model 3, it meant that I actually had to take my eyes off the road and then find the position of the indicator and then press it. Now, this does also raise another question in terms of longevity, because I've seen certain owners of the Model S Plaid complaining about their indicator buttons not actually actuating as they should. So why has Tesla gotten rid of these indicator stalks is absolutely beyond me, and I really do think it might be a deal breaker for certain individuals out there. Now, another complaint that I have, specifically if you look at the alternatives out there, is that the Model 3, very much like all Tesla vehicles, does not incorporate Android Auto or Apple CarPlay over a wired or wireless connection. Now, you might be thinking, why is this of importance, specifically if you have got fantastic route planning done via the infotainment system and your contacts are being synchronized over Bluetooth? Well, quite simply, if you have points of interest, let's say on Google Maps that you've been using for over 2 decades, or let alone the fact that you use Apple Maps or Waze, then you're not going to be able to utilize them on the Model 3. Furthermore, for those people who like storing audio on their smartphone and then playing them back via the infotainment system, you'll be limited to the lowest quality SBC codec. And indeed over here is a downgrade over its predecessor that incorporated the AAC codec as well. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say over here is for higher audio playback, you'll not be able to plug in your smartphone. But thankfully, however, you have got USB playback, although that will take away the dashcam feature. And you will also have the likes of Apple Music, Spotify and Tidal, which are incorporated directly via the infotainment system. Although it's worth considering here, they are part of the premium connectivity package, which is a subscription that costs £10 a month. Now this actually perfectly brings me on to the audio system. And as standard, you've got 9 speakers in the rear-wheel drive configuration, and that does actually incorporate a subwoofer, which it didn't previously do. And then you have got a dual subwoofer 17 speaker system in the long-range model, which is on review. What I'll say over here, it still has fantastic class-leading audio, and in fact does actually up the ante, specifically in the bass department in comparison to its predecessor. So I really do love what Tesla have done in terms of the overall audio system, and if you want some more information and insight about it, make sure you check out my detailed audio review that can be found up on your pop-up banner, down in the description below, or indeed in the pinned comments. Now, to conclude the use of technology, I would just like to point out that the use of the Tesla app is absolutely fantastic. It allows you to use it as a key, or indeed have certain controls that can be done remotely. For example, you can summon it in certain countries. You can also open the frunk or indeed the tailgate electronically. And you've also got the use of preconditioning directly via the app, which can be handy on those colder days. Ultimately over here, the app itself is very responsive and is a good addition to owning the Tesla Model 3. So moving swiftly on, let's talk about storage. And here you have got the glove box, which is pretty slender. There you will also find a USB port, which is used for your dashcam footage or for high-res audio playback. Then towards the center console, you'll find 2 high-speed wireless chargers, which are very much appreciated. And then further down, you'll have a customizable area with retractable trays. Under one of them, you'll find 2 cup holders, while on the other, you'll find a pretty large area for storage. You'll also find a 12-volt socket, which can be handy for plugging in, let's say, a dash cam, or if you want to power any sort of electronics. Speaking of which, there is a 65-watt USB Type-C port, which is found within the center armrest compartment. Indeed, over here, this means that you can power a laptop or indeed a smartphone. There are also 2 high-speed USB Type-C ports found towards the rear of the center console for your rear occupants, all of which are certainly appreciated. Better still, all the storage compartments that I've mentioned so far are lined in fabric, which means that your loose change or keys won't be heard rattling around. And yes, that also includes the door bins, where the front 2 are large enough to accommodate a 500ml bottle alongside some small to medium-sized goods, while the rear 2 are a little bit more limited, but you do have a pull-down armrest compartment which does reveal 2 cup holders. It is a shame, however, that the American automaker hasn't optimized the pull-down armrest compartment, because you could have had some extra storage within this area. Now, of course, when it comes to transporting goods, you have got the boot, and here you've got 594 litres to play around with, which is actually pretty big. Unfortunately, manufacturer has not shared a total capacity, but I suspect it'll be actually pretty large. Now here you've got an electronically controlled tailgate, but it does not have a hatchback design, unlike, for example, in the Polestar 2 or the BMW i4, making it a little bit less practical for those people who have pets. But then you have got a flat floor when you drop down the 60/40 rear split folding seats, and you've also got a huge underfloor compartment, which can be handy for taking certain goods or, for example, your charging cables. Aside from this, at the front of the vehicle, you have got 88 litres of capacity, often referred to as a frunk, and therefore making it actually pretty usable. However, it's not as practical to access it on a regular basis because it's not electronically operated, unlike the tailgate. Of course, you can electronically release it via the app or the infotainment system, but when it comes to closing it, you'll have to be doing it manually. So next up we get onto seating comfort, and here I've got no issues whatsoever at the front or rear of the cabin. The seats themselves are all very accommodating and soft. You've also got electronic controls as standard for your front occupants, heated and ventilated seats as well, the latter being a new addition. As for the rear of the cabin, the rear outer seats are heated, but unfortunately the rear middle seat is no longer heated, which indeed over here is a regression over the previous generation model. It actually did take me by surprise, but doesn't really bother me in the slightest. What will be of importance to certain individuals, however, is the fact that you have got a high-resolution 8-inch touchscreen display. This serves for the climate controls and also media controls, which is a really nice touch for your rear occupants. Elsewhere, you've also got a glass roof, which is a fantastic addition. However, it's worth mentioning there is no electronically operated sunshade, and in fact you'll have to purchase an additional accessory if you do want to block out those extra rays. Now, aside from all of this, I would just like to point out that there is a trend that Tesla started, and that is when it comes to the pressure sensor that is found within the driver's seat. Yes, indeed, it's very easy when it comes to jumping in and out of the vehicle, because you don't have to press a start-stop button. However, it does mean that if you've got other people within the cabin, the vehicle could sometimes power off. Thankfully, it's very easy just to quickly power it on by simply touching the touchscreen, be it at the front or rear of the cabin. Speaking about interacting with the vehicle, I would like to point out that there is a door release button found on all 4 doors, and therefore makes it actually quite intuitive to exit the vehicle. It is worth pointing out this cannot be done while you're driving, so you don't have to worry about your kids playing around with it. With that said, there is a door release mechanism which can be used in an emergency situation. Now when it comes to the exterior profile of the vehicle, the door handles themselves are concealed, and therefore improves the overall aerodynamics. However, I do prefer what the rival automakers have provided, in other words with door handles propping out of the vehicle itself or indeed being incorporated within the door frame itself. And the reason behind this is because in completely pitch black scenarios, it can be a little bit hard to figure out the technique with the Tesla Model 3. Nonetheless, whilst you get your head around it, it might actually become second nature. Now this does actually perfectly bring me onto its exterior design, and here I really love what the manufacturers achieved at the front of the vehicle. Indeed, over here it actually reminds me of the Ferrari 296 or Roma. It's got a bit more of that aggressive flair to it, and no longer has got that sort of fish or frog-like design of its predecessor. I didn't really have any complaints of it, but it's nice to see this updated look that is present on the Model 3. You've also got nice little headlights that feed seamlessly with the bumpers. As for the sidal profile, you've got body-coloured wheel arches, and you've got 18-inch Photon wheels that come fitted as standard, or 19-inch Nova wheels which will set you back an additional £1,500. As for the rear, you've got a nice sleek profile with those nice looking taillights, and for those with a keen eye you will notice that the Tesla logo has been replaced with the Tesla wording. Now all these design changes have aided the drag coefficient to be the lowest that it's ever been, at 0.219. and therefore making it actually a very aerodynamically efficient vehicle. Now past all of this, the vehicle comes in pearl white as standard. However, if you want deep blue metallic or solid black, it'll cost you £1,300. The ultra red and the picture stealth grey will cost a whopping £2,000 instead. As for your over towing capacity, it's rated at 750 kilograms and 1,000 kilograms for unbraked and brake trailers respectively, which is decent but certainly not class-leading figures. Now on the other hand, an area where Tesla has really excelled in the past, specifically in comparison to some of the rivals, is when it comes to its overall crash safety. Not only did it score 5 out of 5 stars in 2019, but it also had fantastic scores, with 96% in adult occupancy, 86% in child occupancy, and a whopping 94% in its safety assist scores. Now granted, these scores do not apply to the new generation models because they have not been validated by Euro NCAP, but nonetheless one can only imagine that the latest generation model is equally safe. Now to reinforce that point, you have got a plethora of driver assistance systems that come featured as standard, which isn't the same that could be said about some of the alternatives out there. Here you've got forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking system, drowsy driver warning, lane keep and lane departure warning, traffic sign recognition, adaptive cruise control and auto steer, which are absolutely excellent, blind spot, collision warning and indicator, and also a camera system, which effectively incorporates the camera systems which are found on the side and brings them into the 15.4-inch display, allowing you to see your surroundings. A great little inclusion by the manufacturer. Effectively over here, the driver assistance systems will keep you safe on the road and are great to see included as standard. Now, should you want to upgrade the experience, you've got the enhanced autopilot package at £3,400. Now, this adds auto park, summon, smart summon, navigate on autopilot and auto lane change. Now, while these are all great inclusions, I don't really think it's worth the asking price. Furthermore, the full self-driving package at a whopping £6,800 makes absolutely no sense in the UK or Europe, at least not at the time of filming. And specifically over here, it only adds traffic light and stop sign recognition and also auto steer that will come later in 2024. Now finally, I would like to point out that maneuverability is a breeze, and this is thanks to its 11.7 meter turning circle. You've also got good visibility at the front and the side, although the A-pillars are a little bit chunky. As for the rear, it's a little bit limited due to its slope profile and the emission of a wiper. Now, I would also like to point out that there are no ultrasonic sensors anywhere on the new Model 3, which might take some people by surprise because they have been present as far as I can remember. And this means that the manufacturer is going for something called Tesla Vision, which incorporates the camera-based system instead. Now, yes, indeed, this might seem pretty futuristic and also technologically advanced. However, when it comes to in practice, I did feel that the camera-based system was a little bit off, be it in terms of the overall distance or sometimes picking up objects that simply weren't there. And this could also be in part due to the fact that the camera systems did not actually have any sort of washer jets in order to clean them. So therefore means that you have to regularly clean them if you want Tesla Vision to work as well as it should. Now on that note over here, the rear and side cameras are accessible via the infotainment system, giving you peace of mind when you're parking. Elsewhere, you've also got Sentry mode, which can be activated when you park up, and therefore giving you peace of mind in case anyone comes to damage your vehicle. And furthermore, you've also got a dashcam feature that comes featured as standard. So with all that in mind, it brings us on to our verdict, and hopefully throughout this review you've attained that the new Tesla Model 3 does indeed incorporate quite a few upgrades over the previous generation model. It's slightly more comfortable to drive, has got that updated exterior and interior design, which are certainly appreciated, all while preserving fantastic electric range and performance at a competitive price. As a result of all of this, it still gets our Best Buy award. However, the omission of those indicator stalks might be a deal breaker for certain individuals, like myself, and as a result you might want to look elsewhere. There are fantastic alternatives from the likes of the Polestar 2, BMW i4, the Hyundai Ioniq 6, and even the BYD Seal. You could even throw in the VW ID3 and Cupra Born within the same category. Now we'd be curious to know which vehicle you would pick down the comment section below. And of course, if you have enjoyed this detailed independent review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.